Hello, and welcome to the third episode of Home Inspections Matter. I'm Yon Lucas, and this is Brian Long.
Hello, everyone.
So, Brian and I were kind of talking about what we were going to talk about this week, and I'm going to kind of let Brian roll into uh, the thoughts on what we were thinking about. So, go for it, Brian.
Yeah, my first thought is just kind of going over, the title of the show is Home Inspections Matter. So why is a home inspection prior to purchase crucial? And, buying a home is one of the most significant investments you'll make in your lifetime. It's not just a financial transaction, but it's also an emotional one. And having a home inspector come in who is not emotional at the time, who's a neutral third party, is going to hopefully uh, take that excitement that you're having for buying the home and make you feel like you are um, that you're going to not have potential headaches going forward for what this home um, uh, can actually give you. So, meaning, I guess, kind of got a little tongue tied there, but the financial problems that a home inspector can find for you can be pretty critical. So, we're looking at a visual inspection, but we also find some hidden issues for you. And when I mean hidden, we're looking at structural issues, and we're going to start, say, with the roof, then go to the attic, then work our way down through the home and get to the basement. And what we're doing is tying that whole house together for you. And that's how we can find a structural issue for you in the home. It might not be as easily seen as roof rafters not properly um, tied together into the home. It might not be just a visual crack in the foundation. It's taking several aspects of the home and putting it together. One of the things that we write up a lot, and I get mixed feedback on it, is safety issues. And I don't know, Jan, how if you get any feedback for all the little safety issues you write, because you're writing some of the minor ones and you've got to stress the safety issues if it's a fall hazard or if it's um, like an electrical shock hazard. Do you get much feedback from people if you're writing the?
I do. As you know, my dad was a firefighter, so I'm really big into the fire safety issues, carbon
Mhm.
monoxide, things like that. We deal, a lot of the new construction, which I do, and a lot of the current construction I inspect, um, tend to have a lot of gas. So yeah, I'm going to use a safety issue as an example. I was inspecting a home over in Buford this week, and I looked up, the smoke detectors are there. They're nice and yellow. Well,
Mhm.
I removed the smoke detector. On the back of every smoke detector is the year and the month that it's made.
Mhm.
Um, smoke detectors are said to swap out about every 5 to 10 years. Personally, I think they should be swapped out about every 5 years
Okay.
because the amount of gunk and guck and everything that's in the house um, tends to contaminate those. So, what I called it out this past week. I had 6 smoke detectors in this house that were all 12 years old.
Yeah.
Again, a safety issue. Things like, and this kind of falls into code stuff too, but like clearances for water heaters from
Mhm.
on-demand external hot water heaters, which is an indirect vent water heater, distance from a soffit, distance from a structure of a home. Some people think that it's being nitpicky and things like that, but there's a reason why they come up with
Yeah.
these things. Safety is a big thing.
Mhm.
And I think every residential contract has it in there that safety issues have to be addressed if it's a
Yeah.
safety issue.
Exactly.
Um,
And it's not going to make it shouldn't, I wouldn't say it shouldn't. It's not a material defect
mhm,
typically. You most of the time when we'll use smoke detector concerns. And
mhm.
I want to be very clear, I am 100% pro smoke detector. I've replaced every one in my home except for my basement one. Um, And I did that because I operate a wood shop down there, and it's not as sensitive to the dirt, and could be a weak point. But but again, I'm pro smoke detector. But you need to know if they're not working, or if the carbon monoxide detector is not there, and that's part of what that inspection is for. Is that you should get these replaced beforehand. It's not going to be a negotiating deal for you, but those safety concerns, they're there for a reason. Like Jan said, is that the state of Ohio is going to want us to report on safety concerns we can find, and if we find a balcony guard railing that is not even close to a 200-pound limit, meaning we can almost push the 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 rail posts out, we're going to call
Yep.
it up, and it's going to be a major safety issue. And just like if there's a plate cover missing in your attic, well, there's multiple reasons that it's a concern to us as a home inspector that you should replace that dollar plate cover, but it's not um, it's not going to um, be a costly repair for you if you do it yourself as you move in or hire somebody to do it. Um, and that kind of brings up the next part, is to avoid the costly repairs. Um, there's even, if we're finding some minor issues, that if you don't address them initially as you coming in, they can turn into a significant repair going forward.
Hmm.
So caulking around windows, it's something that you're going to need to do to your windows. I say 3 to 5 years, depending on how you face sunwise. How is it down in South Carolina? What's your exterior caulk lasting, or do you have a typical thought on that?
So a lot of our windows, on the older homes,
Yeah,
I try to explain to people all the time on the older homes. I was like, caulking dries out. Caulking also, slowly degrades. Down here we have to power wash our houses twice a year because of the pollen and because of the
mm-hmm.
amount of spores that we have around. So people put bleach, all this stuff on their houses, and it slowly wears away. Stucco homes super 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 need that caulking. I call it out all the time.
Yeah,
Incomplete caulking, deteriorating caulking. But a lot of the new construction around here that's vinyl siding or hardy plank, everything's flashed in with the window. The window actually has flashing around it. They use
yeah,
flashing tape. But the older homes, absolutely. I see it quite a bit. I mean, I can take my finger down some of the windows, which I did about a week ago, and I can go like this. And the caulking is so old, it's dissolving in my finger as I'm running across it. And it sounds
yeah.
weird, but just literally just a finger test across it.
Mm-hmm.
Give it a little push, see if it's hard, see if it's soft. And I've had buying agents like, really? And I'm like, I don't know. Do you want the house to rot? Because if that caulking fails and you get moisture intrusion issues, you now have stucco. Behind that stucco is wood. Behind that wood is framing. You start running into issues along that lines. But yeah, I mean, preventative maintenance is a huge thing. You were talking about cover plates in an attic. I call that all the time.
Yeah.
Non-contained electrical splices is what I have it in the attic space is what I have it as a defect in my report.
Ooh, you're fancy.
I do.
I like it.
Um,
No, it's a compliment too.
and I call it that simply for the fact that people are like, well, why is that such a big deal? I was just like, well, not saying it's going to happen, but let's say you have a leak in your roof. Let's say that leak arcs on the wire. Let's say that, it's all ifs and ands and, buts and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But the biggest question that I have, for homeowners that don't do the maintenance and have this is, well, what did you do with the cover plate when you removed it?
Mm-hmm.
Why did you splice the wire? Now that you splice that wire, what's that wire junctioned off of? And now have you overloaded that breaker? I mean, it goes back to a multitude of things, but that's not for
Right.
us to determine. But
No.
it's one of those things that I think about.
And to me, it's just cover it. That's the
Yeah.
thing. It's a simple solution. And then it becomes a mute point for both people. You get familiar of your home, whether you're doing it yourself, if you're crawling up in the attic, or it's just, it doesn't need to be exposed. And the reasons are multiple, and they are a bunch of if this happens or that happens. But if it's not attended to, or if it is attended to, they all go away. for the most part.
Mhm.
Like you lose all the issues of insulation getting in there. You lose that arc problem by having it covered.
Here's the biggest thing: you have that in the attic, and we all know that
Mhm,
attic is joists and maybe a floor, a certain
mhm,
amount of flooring.
mhm,
I'd say 90% of the houses that I've gone into have a certain amount of flooring in the attic because most of our HVACs are in the attic and water
mhm.
heaters in the attic up here. So you have a non-contained electrical space, arms reach up, and you're using that joist as you walk across
Walk
that
across
attic.
it. Hmm.
Let's just say your hand goes onto that. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to electrocute yourself, and you're going to go right through that ceiling.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have many of they exist. And actually I had a high velocity system in an attic this past week, and just a beautiful system. It was a Unico system, and it's modular, it fit up there, but they actually had the platform. They had the service disconnects. I could stand and walk in the attic. It was spray foam for the insulation. It was just I just wanted to stay in the attic. It was beautiful. I don't
Yeah,
get to see those that often.
I see them a lot down in the how do I put it? I see it a lot in the higher end homes down in Hilton Head, more of the
Mhm.
custom homes, things along that lines.
Yeah.
Um, but for the most part, the homes that are built down here just literally have I want to say 8x16 platform in the attic. I've
Hmm.
got one in my attic, 8x16. It's
Yeah.
got my furnace, my coils for my condenser for my air conditioner,
Hmm.
and then all my ductwork.
Yep.
Um, but we see a lot down here where it's that and a platform for. I always shake my head like, why do they put hot water heater or why do they put water heaters in an attic?
Hmm.
But they do a lot down here.
Yeah.
Um, and it blows my mind, but it's very common part and parcel down here. But I go to those custom homes down on Hilton Head Island and spray foam. The attic is literally like 2,000 square feet. It's got flooring throughout it. It
Wow.
has spray. It's got two air handlers in it, two hot water heaters in it. It's and they basically have a whole house worth of storage in it. I mean, it's a gigantic space. And I'm like, wow, this is great. At least I'm not inspecting 165-degree blown in insulation attic with no
Yeah.
radiant barrier sheeting, anything like that. And they're nice. I mean, they really are.
Yeah. And I'm just getting off topic because I get people asking me a lot about, especially in the newer homes here, can I store a bunch of stuff up there? And usually with the designs we have and the trusses and stuff are not meant to have a dead load in the attic. I'm assuming you're coming across different designs probably down in South Carolina, or
100%.
they're reinforcing in the areas where they're going to put the mechanicals.
So the attics that have the mechanicals, number one, engineered truss system. An engineer designs the truss system to hold certain loads.
Hmm.
When we have the attic spaces in the attics, we see that the engineer has designed the trusses to usually or typically 2x6. The areas of the attics that is not designed to take a load are 2x4s.
Of
The
course.
trusses
Yeah.
are designed. That bottom cord of that truss is 2x6.
Hmm.
Well, as soon as you get away from that platform, it all drops to 2x4. I say
Yeah.
it to people all the time: the more stuff you store in the attic, the more problems you're going to have in the long run.
Hmm.
Meaning, I tell everybody 150, 200 pounds, that's a full time load up there. Because the way truss systems are designed, they're not meant to take a load pushing down on it the whole time. It's holding a roof up. You start putting loads up there, that's when we start calling out ceiling cracking, drywall seam tape joints starting to fail, ceiling tape joints starting to fail.
Hmm.
See that, and that's a lot of cosmetic stuff. But prolonged exposure to that, the wood eventually starts taking on the shape of the load.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And not only that, it's a safety hazard.
Yes.
Um, Everybody has their, every home inspector has that one nightmare story, and you probably don't have it yet, where something happens and there's damage to a ceiling.
Hmm.
I had one on Hilton Head Island 5 years ago. House built in the 70s. Um, Hard ducting, square.
Okay.
and the flooring was 7/16, not even half inch,
Hmm.
7/16 plywood that went about 10 feet that way, turned right, went 10 feet that way. But next to that flooring was that square HVAC ducting. Well, I get up there, start inspecting the attic, and the whole ducting system has stuff stacked on top of it, which
Hmm.
two things: bad for the ducting system, number one, and number two, it's you shouldn't store stuff like that. So I get
Yeah.
about 10 feet down, and as I turn the corner, my foot grazes the square ducting system, and a suitcase 10 feet away from me falls off the square duct and goes through the person's ceiling.
Wow.
Now, I didn't put my foot through the ceiling. I didn't put that suitcase there. I didn't knock the suitcase off. Technically, I am not responsible for the damage
Hmm.
because that was there when we were there inspecting. And as we're walking 10 feet away from me, it is away. Um, but I still paid for the ceiling repair. I still paid for them to paint. I still paid for them to do all that. But ceilings, the whole thing is nobody's going to be happy if something comes through your ceiling. And when you start having things stored, and they're not even storing on the floor a lot of times, they're
Hmm.
building shelves on the trusses and stuff like that. I tell people it's not a good idea.
No, no. Yeah, we have a third floor furnace system that's into a finished attic space and living area.
Yep.
And there's a closet that it's contained in, and then it leads into the open attic. And we tend to want to store stuff in there. And I'm always got to go through and be like, nope, we got to pull all this out now just to keep to be away from the system and make sure that the airflow and ventilation in the attic is proper and that we're not going to be damaging any of the equipment, because we do have some flex duct up there that can get crushed, it can get bent, it can
Yep.
get pulled off. It's just, you got to keep that stuff out of there, which luckily we're not big into keeping stuff in the house. So usually we can find a way to work around it. But I know
And you
it's,
spent a lot of money on the HVAC system about 4 years ago, if I remember correctly.
yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, and it's, that's the maintenance guy and me. Replace them both. They're both old. So, um, but yeah, and that's kind of one thing I didn't really have on my thought list, but it's the education that you're going to get and the perspective of the home inspector that is good for the buyer.
yep.
It's a different perspective than the agent they're working with, and it's different than what their dad or their uncle or their friend who's a contractor is going to help them
Don't even get me
um,
started on that.
discuss. Yeah, it's you know, and that we're going to also help them plan for future maintenance, and a lot of those concerns that I like to call them my blue label concerns are those things that you you just need to take care of in the home that'll be your future maintenance. We're going to help you with that based on the issues we find. So you mentioned my HVAC. I knew that my system was, one was 1996 and one was 2006 when I bought the home in 2017.
Hmm.
So that's aged appliances. Same thing with my water heater. It's an electric water heater. It's got a shorter life than gas because it will build up with sediment in the bottom, and you can maintain it. There's things you can do with it. I'm not going to get into all the aspects of electric versus gas water heaters,
Hmm.
but it's now knocking on the door that I have to replace it.
Yep.
Um, our water, it's filled with enough sediment that we're not getting the storage of hot water, and it's not coming out as hot as it should. So we'll see that
Well,
replacement.
you also live in Ohio, so
Mhm.
that greater Cincinnati area has extremely hard water.
Yeah.
And on electric hot water heaters, that's where you're
Mhm.
at, particularly in the Ohio Valley, has hard
Mhm.
water, and people don't realize that that also ages the system a lot quicker. The
Yes, it does.
lime, everything like that.
Hmm. And I would never do a water softener. I hate those things.
Oh God, no! You feel like you never get the soap washed off you.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Um,
And I
the
think.
thing I can tell
Go
you
ahead.
is the thing I can tell you is Like you're talking about the education of things. I mean, your 1996 or your 1996 HVAC system.
Hmm.
It is a heat pump, correct?
No, no.
It wasn't a heat pump. It was a gas furnace and
Yep.
a okay.
Yep.
Did you have an air conditioning coil on that also?
For what, in the air handler or the?
Yeah, in
Yes,
the air
yes,
handler.
yes.
Okay, so let me ask you this: what age was the air handler or the coil?
It was original as far as I know.
Okay, so it
Because
probably in '96. It probably was R22 refrigerant,
yes, both systems were R22. Even the 2006 was R22.
and that's where a home inspector
Hmm.
comes into handy.
Yeah.
And for people out there that don't know, there are refrigerants change constantly. R22 is one of the refrigerants that's no longer allowed by the EPA in the United States, was discontinued.
Hmm.
Then they went to R410. But once you have a system that has R22 and it starts to go, as a homeowner, if you don't know that it's R22 and you've got a heat pump, not a furnace with a condenser, but a heat pump itself, that whole system has to go. Not just one piece of it, both pieces of it.
Hmm.
That's where a home inspector comes in handy. They give you the full view.
Yep. Yeah, and we had a price to do a repair to the 2006 system, and it was just shy of $5,000 for putting the Band-Aid on it. So a
Mhm.
coil, replacing the condensing unit, and switching over to 410A in that conversion. And you don't get your warranty and your guarantee like you would if you replace the system. So for us, we knew it was going to happen. Financially, we had planned, so we didn't want to do it. But it made sense at the time to go, let's replace the systems. We know 410A is going to be changed, which, it's on the outs now too. Um, but we knew that we would be buying another 20-year system for the home
Yeah.
and protecting our asset. So if we had to move and sell today, looking at my 7-year maintenance plan, the joke is, when are we going to do something pretty to the house? It's We've got a brand new roof. We took off 4 layers of shingles. We have the
Four
new
layers.
4 layers. The original metal roof was still on
How in the
with.
hell did that pass inspection?
Well, I don't think it was done. Yeah,
Four layers.
yeah,
Wow. How many
and
thousands of pounds of weight did you have on your roof?
on balloon construction. So we could easily see two, and it wasn't four throughout. But it was on the front deck where they had not done the dormer. They had left some material on,
Wow.
and we caught it in, doing relative inspection checks of the roof on where, what are we looking at depths, but we did not catch the metal. They had nice drip edge. It had things that the exhaustive exploration into the roof, did we find that it had the additional layers, but um and we added
And not
venting
to
at the
sound
time.
bad, that's in certain aspects, that's hard to find.
Super hard to find.
Yeah. I mean, if you have two layers, it's relatively easy to find. But if you have it hidden underneath a bunch of stuff,
Mhm.
and they've done a good job band-aiding it and putting
Yeah.
new fascia on and all that stuff, that's where it starts to become fine because it's hard to pull back those layers of the onion.
Yeah, yeah, especially because it adheres to each other over time. So
Hmm.
you can't. I'm not going to tear open the. I'm not going to risk tearing the shingle. Um, we looked for depth issues of nails, like how long was the nails penetrating the roof. You're like, okay,
Hmm.
well, there definitely some short nails in there. Did they use a really short nail, or is it because there's buildup of material between the? We have wood plank boards
Yep.
versus uh,
Sheeting.
OSB or Pliner or sheeting. Yeah. Um, so we knew it. And again, what does that do? That just adds cost to me when I did the repair.
Yeah.
So, um, which I was fine with. It was a known. I would like it to have been different, but the emotional side, or the part that was buying the home that was important to us, was the walkable community.
Yeah.
So there's the emotional assets to the house, is, the location, the quality of life that my wife and I wanted to keep. Was we were moving from living directly in the city and over the Rhine to being just right on the edge of Cincinnati, and it was important for us that we didn't have to use our car for everything. We don't have great infrastructure, as you know, in Cincinnati. Um, it hasn't changed much since you left. We got
Mm.
more bike lanes and stuff, but that's a huge importance to us. So we were excited to be in the community we're in, because in less than a little over a quarter mile, we're walking to bars, library. I walked to my vet to pick up medication this week. This is,
That's good.
yeah, that's the stuff we want to have. So,
I mean, going back to, what we do, I mean, the one thing that I think that, I always like, and I explain it, it literally sounds like I'm speaking from an
mhm,
Internachi script, but trying to explain to people what a home inspection is and what we do is, I'll describe it just like Ben and Nick Gromiko say it from Internachi, which is a home inspection is a non-invasive visual examination of a
mhm,
home on the day of the inspection. What people don't understand is if it's not raining outside and I
mhm,
show no signs of leaking in your roof and the roof looks great and the roof boots look great and the flashing looks great, but then you move into the home and 3 weeks later there's a leak in the roof, we can't predict future
mhm.
predictions.
Right.
Um, now that comes down to the inspector. There are some inspectors down here that don't drone, don't walk roofs. Will give an opinion based on looking from the ground 20 feet away from the house,
Yeah.
and that's where you kind of open up that liability. But you know, I explain to people like the value of a home inspection is, or what we do is we're giving you, your home doesn't come with an instruction manual when you buy it. Essentially what we're doing is giving you a guidebook, and that guidebook is pretty much a repair guidebook, a checklist, of things that are the home contains, that like, I know my hot water heater's good, I know my roof's shot,
Mhm.
my condenser is, or my outside condenser is 15 years old. I need to budget for that. I have, I'm buying the house that has a stove in it. One of the burners doesn't work.
Right.
But this also becomes, one of the things that I think is lost to a lot of, I love my real estate agents that I deal with, but there are a lot of newbies that are out there. The one thing it's lost is, a home inspection report is also your bargaining tool. You look at somebody and be
Yeah.
like, listen, I know you want to get this money for the house, but I got to put a new stove in. I got to put a new roof on. I know, and
Mhm.
I got to get a new condenser. Can we kind of talk about, some of these things in that transaction? Now, a good real estate agent will partner up with a home inspector, and they will use that to their advantage to make it so that their client is getting the proper house. I mean, I can't tell you how many times during COVID people were foregoing inspections.
Right.
They were waiving appraisals. The contingency timeline was shortened. And then I get a call 3 months later. I had a young family, young couple, 20, I want to say late 20s, with a 2-year old that bought a house at
Mhm.
the cap of what they could spend. And
Mhm.
we did the home inspection, and come to find out that the water heater was leaking. It was 25 years old. The air handler was 20 years old. Um, and it was, the heat was running on emergency heat, and the air conditioning didn't work at all.
Mhm.
Uh, they had, the microwave didn't work. And I think they had a water leak. If I remember correctly, there was a water leak at the main shutoff in the garage, and they couldn't figure out where the water was coming from.
Mhm.
But they bought, I mean, you know, they bought the house pretty much, essentially a home inspection. You can walk a home. Untrained eyes are not going to find anything.
Right.
Um, but they bought the house essentially sight unseen. They bought
Mhm.
it at the maximum of what they could afford. Now they've got 50 plus $1,000 worth of repairs, and they're like, we can't afford to repair the
Right.
house. What do we do? And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I was like, how much
Dude.
did you put down? FHA loan, 5%. So they only got 5% equity in the home.
Mhm.
They can't get a HELOC. They can't get a home equity loan. So, they're having to borrow money from their family. They're having to do multiple things to, work on how to do this. Payment plans for an HVAC system at, 20% interest. I mean,
Yeah.
so they're thinking we got the home of our dreams, but again, they passed up the home inspection aspect, and now they went from buying their dream home to buying the money pit.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If an inspection can't be performed, say it's even waiving all defects, I really respect the agents and the buyers that are going through and still having the home inspection, even if it's like, unless it's structural or whatever they said a dollar amount concerns are going to be discussed about, or that they're able to pull away from the contract, it still should be done. And I see, I don't know the exact number, but I've probably done at least a half dozen this year, and I can't tell you how many phone calls that I've gotten, from people pricing inspections that, they're like, can we just do this quick inspection? Because I can't really do anything major. Can we do it limited? And we can't in Ohio. We're doing the full inspection.
Yep.
And it's, if the base price is, $420 and another guy's $325, but he's not going up on the roof or using the drone, it's really not an apples to apples comparison,
It's
because
not.
you still, whether, I don't really care if you're, what your contract says about your negotiating. I mean, when we say not care, it's not really the focus of what my intent is for being at your house. My purpose as the inspector is to do the same inspection for every home I'm doing, and go through it with as much thorough detail to provide you as much information as possible. And if I do find that $10,000-$12,000 negotiating item for you, that's a win for you. I don't want you to be that family that's $50,000 upside down in their home.
God, no.
Because
Absolutely not.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know how on my first homes, whether it was just conservativeness or not having money to overspend, but I can't remember what. Oh, I do have a good scenario. We were approved for around 200,000. This is years ago. This is around 2007.
Yep.
And we looked at a home that we were under contract, and it was 189. And we really loved the house, so we just full price offer. We did the home inspection, and the roof was looked at by a reputable company. It wasn't Deer Park at the time, but it was actually done by Eric Manteufel, if that's a name you
I
remember.
remember Eric
Yeah.
Manteufel.
Yeah, his dad had a roofing company in Cincinnati, and so this is a family-owned business that, I'd known the guy since, high school. And he's like, here's your worst case scenario bids for what you should do for the home, and gave me
Yep.
the price. And it really tore my wife and I up at the time to walk away from the home, because we were already at our max price. We had asked for the full price of the roof because we just couldn't do it. There was
Yep.
just no way that, I can't remember if Amy was in her second grad school or not, but we were a librarian and a bike mechanic. We were not buying,
Yeah.
and our agent was super supportive of that. He got it. I mean, we tried to make that deal go through till like midnight the final day. And the seller offered to do some financing. We tried to look at how we get the numbers out, but if you don't have that monthly number, then it's not the right investment for you. You can't be cash deprived going into the home purchase because of a maintenance issue.
You can't go in house rich, cash poor.
Yeah,
It's just,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, the house we bought, my wife and I bought, I want to say it was 2010
Mm-hmm.
in Myrtle Beach. Actually, no, it was 2011 Myrtle Beach. We bought it. We had the home inspection, and at the time I wasn't working as a home inspector, so I had to hire somebody. And I literally still have that report. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember my realtor, which is actually a friend of mine. I mean, I love the guy to death. Hired the guy. He did the inspection. It was a week till I got the inspection report back.
Wow.
Very old school. Walked around with a camera, wrote notes down. I can see why it took a week,
Yeah.
but I've gone back after I got the report, and we bought an emotional buy. We were living in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, in Surfside. We
Hmm.
were approximately 1.5 miles away from the house, from the beach. Could have taken a golf cart there in 10 minutes. Um, our condition was we wanted a pool, we wanted 3 bedrooms, 2 bath. Well, in 2011, $149,000 for that house was still cheap.
Hmm.
2,200 square feet. It was perfect. But the amount of money that I ended up putting in over the course of, I don't know, the 6 years we lived there was ridiculous. I mean, the home inspector really didn't look at a lot. I mean, not even just safety. When we went and toured the house, it had a bath mat down on the bathroom floor. It had a towel draped over the master bathroom bathtub. They had the recliners in front of the fireplace.
Hmm.
The house was dimly lit. And I was like, it's not bad. Needs a coat of paint. It's very outdated. There's a bunch of stuff
Hmm.
we can do and we can take care of it over the years. Well, we moved in and everything was gone. Their pictures, their drapes, their blinds, everything like that. We thought the house was yellow. No, there were areas where the pictures were. We come to find out they're 2 pack-a-day smokers that never opened. We
Mm.
figured they were smokers, but 2 pack-a-day smokers that obviously never opened their window. Where the pictures were, the wall was white, and where the pictures weren't, where the pictures weren't, the walls were yellow.
Yeah.
We go into the bathroom. Well, I understand why the bath mat was on the floor because I think the old man put out about 50 cigarettes on the linoleum floor.
Oh.
Um, yeah, in front of the fireplace where they had the recliners. When they moved out, the carpet was all burnt up because they had the fireplace there. At one point, they must have had like stuff coming out of the fireplace and popping
Fireplace.
out. But the home inspector didn't even look at any of that.
Yeah.
Um, now I ended up completely gutting both bathrooms, completely redoing them, all new fixtures, all new vanity, bathtubs, tiles, flooring, toilets, everything. Just redid both bathrooms. Redid the carpet in the living room. But it would have been nice to have that. Granted, that was a good price for that house, but I probably could have talked him down $10,000-$15,000 with the
Right.
amount of work that still needed to be done.
Yep.
They converted a room off of the Carolina room that was there. It's also a sunroom.
Okay.
Um, into a laundry room. Well, that's great, but guess where all the water drained? It didn't drain into a sewer. It drained into the back porch. So
Oh.
yeah, it was great. We had a bunch of stuff that I had to do when I moved in. It was just along the lines of like, went out one time. I was like, why is the back porch by the pool all wet? And then I see it coming out, and I go in. I'm like, oh, it's coming from the washer. I was like, what's going on here? So a home inspectors come down to, you know, we are your advocate.
Mhm.
We're in this for a fixed price. We're
Mhm.
not based on the price of the home, which is now changing with realtors and everything. But
Right.
we're not in for the price of the home. We are in it for our base rate, and our base rate's based on multiple things. It's age of the home, square footage, ancillaries such as a crawl space. People get mad at me because I charge for a crawl space, but it's added square footage, it's added time, it's added safety. Um, but we're in it for a base price. And I look at people and I was like, you want to skimp on probably one of the most important things that on the largest investment you're ever going to make
Right.
is your house. You're gonna try to haggle with me for 100 to 150 bucks. Like, go ahead and call the other guy. And when your house has issues or repairs needs to be done, you'll
Mhm.
realize that extra 100 to $125 might have cost you 11, 12, 13, 14, $15,000 more. That's why I don't feel bad saying no when it comes down to it. I've actually said to people like, listen, I'm not your guy. I'm not the cheapest. I'm not going to claim to be. And that shouldn't be a moniker that a home inspector should wear. A
Right.
moniker the home inspector should wear is, I'm going to deliver you the best home inspection report I can. I'm going to inspect this house just like it's mine.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I tell people when they're like, how much time? I usually give them a ballpark time. You know, it's 3.5 to 4 hours. But I also tell them I'm going to be there to get your house done. Um, because when I'm there, my focus is just on your house and the inspection. It's not, you know, yes, we're concerned about the CYA covering all of our bases and getting everything, but I want you to enjoy your home, and I want you to have the confidence I would want myself if I'm in the home. And that's the key to finding that good home inspector. And you know, if it's a 2 hour inspection, it's probably not as thorough as you would want it to be. Or if the person's doing 3 inspections a day, you just get tired doing that. Or if they're working with somebody, that's a whole different story. If you're
Yeah.
side by side working with someone, there's ways to make that work. I'm not going to yuck anyone's yum or complain about how they do stuff. It's more of, are you really going to the details of, you know, we're not supposed to move personal items, but to example, your bath mat, kicking that stuff aside and moving it back, taking a photo of what the conditions were of um, the floor in the area before you set up to go into the attic. I had a really nice home this past week where when I showed up to set the radon equipment, I had my indoor shoes with me. And the first thing I asked is, would you like me to put these shoes on? They're my indoor ones for walking around to set your radon equipment in your home. And the Natalie was the woman's name. She was like, thank you for taking care of my home. And I was like, absolutely. When I'm in your home, because that's the home owner at that time, when I'm in their home doing their inspection, I'm also respectful of their space and making sure we clean it. And they had an amazingly clean home. And so I come in with a drop cloth and a little, it's a entry mat, but it's got some grip to it to put my ladder on. I'm making sure I'm protecting their service, and that takes time. Moving that equipment in not to do damage to the home takes me a little bit extra time, but I don't want to scratch the hardwood floor to the homeowner or the person that is buying the home. So, and
I it's funny. I'll show up to people's houses and I'll start taking my boots off because I generally take my boots off and I go in with socks.
yeah,
Sounds
yeah,
crazy, but when I'm doing my brief overview, I always walk in. If the homeowner's there, I go through exactly what our process is, how long I'm going to be there.
yeah,
And when I tell them I'm going to be there, listen, my time window is 4 hours. And they immediately are like, what?
yeah.
When I had inspected, it only took an
It's
hour. And I
power.
said,
Yeah,
I understand, but I was like, what I do and what
mhm,
other people do, you can't compare apples and oranges.
right,
But I explained to him, I was like, I budget 4 hours. That doesn't mean I'm going to be here for 4 hours.
right.
I've explained to people like we budget 4 hours because we could walk into a beautiful home with no defects and be in and out in 2 hours flat. We
Hmm.
could walk into a home that looks beautiful on the outside and it's a train wreck. And we're going to be there for all of 4 hours because we're having to notate location of defects, put the defects in the system. Once
Hmm.
we find one defect, it's almost like a following breadcrumbs to the
Yeah.
next one. Um, but I always take my shoes off. And they're like, no, 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 you don't have to do that. And I was like, listen, if I don't take my shoes off when I enter somebody's home, my wife wants to kill me. Because in my house, we take the shoes off at the door, and that's the way it is. Um,
It's funny how our wives are our moral compass and steering the ship, and they don't even realize it.
oh, if you look at my website, you can see on the bottom of it, it shows my wife and my daughter, and I've got
Uh-huh.
all my employees on there, and my wife and the daughter, and the bottom it says the true bosses.
Yeah.
Because we all do our jobs for different things. I love what I do. I
Hmm.
find it very interesting. I get to go into some beautiful homes. I get to talk to some great people. Um, and for me, I'm the type of person that likes to educate myself as much as I can on whatever I can.
Hmm.
And with this job, it gives me the ability that if I don't know something, I'm sure as heck going to figure it out and I'm going to do a
Hmm.
bunch of research. And I love that. I mean, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
I geek out about it, but our spouses, our significant others tend to be our driving forces. I mean,
Yeah.
you worked for a fairly corporate firm before, and I think one of the reasons why you got out is because you wanted more time for yourself, more time
Yeah.
for your family. You wanted to be more rewarded. And being a home inspector, being a single man operation like
Mhm.
yourself, or being a multi firm inspector like myself, it does afford us certain liberties of freedom of that. And honestly, I
Yeah.
do the same for my employees. I don't want my employees feeling like they're working corporate America. When they wake up in the morning, they look at their Spectora app, they know what inspections they have. They're like, okay, well, I've got 2 inspections on the day. That one should take me about 2, 3 hours. That one should take me about 2 hours. I'll be home to make dinner.
Yeah.
Um, being it, but the big thing is being the advocate for the homeowner while also being an advocate for the buyer while also respecting the current homeowner's requests,
Mhm.
respecting their home,
Yeah.
respecting their wishes goes a long way, because that person that's selling that home is probably buying a home.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've probably turned 20 or 30 um, people's who I've inspected their houses into clients
Yeah.
over the course of the
Absolutely.
past couple of years.
Yep. Um, yeah, I've got one not on the books yet, but it's a potential that same thing. I was taking care of, I did their home inspection and they're buying a condo right in the wheelhouse of where I worked with in the past. And I was like, oh, I know the building. Started talking to them. They're like, and can we have your card, please? And I'm like, yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. Absolutely. And,
I mean, it speaks a lot. I mean, this is a relationship business.
mhm,
This really is. Um, and the relationships, I mean, I have sometimes people think that our relationships, in my aspect, 50% of my business, I've had people like, well, what's your relationship with the builder? And I was just like, they respect what I do. They know that I'm there to inspect your house for you.
mhm,
And because I have a understanding with the builder of how I do my process, and the builders around here are used to seeing me,
mhm,
my relationships are good with them, because 99% of the time I am being that second set of eyes. But also, with the realtors, some people think that, like, oh, you're just, you're just going to softball the report. No, I've actually fired realtors that have asked me to softball reports. And I've
mhm,
said that that's morally and ethically not correct. You need to call somebody else. And I've called them out. There's actually a group here in the greater Bluffton area that which will remain nameless,
mhm.
um, of about 4 or 5 realtors, all at this one realty company, that I refuse to do business with,
Yeah.
because do you really have to put that in the report? It's going to scare my client. I'm like, I was like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't work for you. I work for the client. And I think your client would want me, or want
Mhm,
you want you to let me inform them of this.
mhm.
It's not just all about your pocketbook, because your pocketbook is a one and done. Mine is forever.
Right. And I mean, part of it is that if you're, I, it's an assumption that the client is going to be scared, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Because if I find something that is about the home, I want to educate them as best I can of why it's a problem. And if they need to seek a professional's opinion of correction, if they need to seek further evaluation by an electrical contractor or further evaluation by a structural engineer, they might have to get an extension on their inspection window to get somebody lined up to do it, or it's a rush to get somebody in.
Hmm.
But I'm going to explain to them why it's important to them. And they're not going to be scared. If they're going to be scared of that one thing, they weren't ready to buy the home almost.
Exactly.
And or there's other underlying reasons, because it's a bunch of things in the home inspections report and they probably should not buy the home. If it gets to that point, and there's a few of the homes that when you're looking at it, not from yourself, but when you're like to 89 things in like the orange, and you got 12 things in the red, and there's altogether, you're just going, wow, there is a lot in this report. Like
Yep.
this thing is just, everything is just building up. That buyer's got some hard thinking to do.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. I tell people all the time, the average home inspection report is going to have between 15 and 20 moderate or orange
mhm,
defects.
mhm,
It's going to have probably 10 to 15 minors. That's on average. I mean, when you start getting into the serious or the red defects, as we call
mhm,
them,
yeah.
that's when the buyer's got to make hard choices. Um, I did a home inspection report probably about a month ago. I think it had 65 moderates, 8 serious, and 5
Mhm,
red. I send the report to the client. I have the discussion with the client,
mhm,
but I also talk to the realtor beforehand and be like, listen, I hate sending these reports out. I'm letting you know that this is a pretty rough report.
mhm.
And I'm going to call the client here shortly. I wanted you to be aware. And 99% of the time, the realtors already know.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Yep.
realtors already know.
Yep.
And, for me, it's a way of me feeling that situation. I usually call the realtor and say, hey, just a heads up. I'm sending the report out here in about 10 minutes. I'm going to call the client here in about 10 minutes. If you want to join on the call, you can. But I just want to give you the heads up. This is pretty rough. And he's like, and I had that happen, and it was a gentleman that was the realtor, and he was like, they're already prepared. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
It's, and then it'll be like, I don't need to get on. You go ahead and talk to them because we have a good working relationship. And
Mhm,
call the client, and they're like, yep, yep, yep. Then come to find out that the client owns a construction company up in the upstate. And he's
mhm.
like, yeah, I'm doing a gut to the studs. And I was like, well, why'd you have me inspect it? And he goes, I wanted to see if there was anything to salvage.
Yeah. It's due diligence. I mean, I appreciate that, because ultimately he's still going to go in and build a scope of work of what he wants his construction plan to be.
Exactly.
But he's taken the time and looking at his risk assessment non-emotionally, and that is just, to me, that's the best advice I could give to anyone. Is when you're making the purchase, a home is expensive. um, you want to try to uncover as much as possible going in. Exhaust all your resources to understand what that purchase is, because in an age where people are buying cars off of click and buys,
Yep.
people are doing the same thing with your home. And unfortunately, when you bring your contractor in to fix something on a click and buy, that somebody has been deceptive, if there is a deceptive rehab done or a flip done to a home, or just a lack of knowledge of what they were doing, and just or working within their means to make it work. So let's just say there was no, you know, they just didn't know what they were doing and they screwed up the whole system.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like
Yeah.
you've heard me say the term before, lipstick on a pig.
Yeah. It's
You make a
gonna,
pig look pretty with a little bit of lipstick and some rouge, but that
yeah.
doesn't mean the pig's not a pig anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of highlights all the key points I kind of had on just, I mean, we could go on forever about the love of the home inspection, but I thought it was kind of a good little reboot after,
Yeah.
it's our busy season to chat about that stuff. So,
The big thing I want everybody to know out there is like, listen, a home inspection is not there to scare you. It's not there to, as you know, the misconception that some realtors have of, oh, you're a deal killer. I've only had that said to me twice, and the house
mhm,
was terrible.
mhm,
But I look at people and I was like, we're not. We're educators in a sense,
mhm,
but also at the same time, we are the last transparent advocate for that homeowner.
yeah,
I mean, the bank's going to want to loan the money. The bank is going to, if they've got good credit score,
mhm,
they have a down payment. The bank is going to want to loan the money. They're going to want to close in that house. Um, the realtors are, I would say the majority of them are absolutely amazing people, and they do a
mhm,
great job. I'd say 99% of them are great. There are some out there that, you know, not talking bad about them, but there are some out there that literally leave me shaking my head sometimes and going, what were you thinking? But the realtor is in it also to get that sale, keep their client happy, because a lot of times clients tend to reuse realtors over and over again.
Yep.
But for us, we are an unbiased third party, professional opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have to do our training, we have to do our inspections, we have to go through state licensing, we have to, in the state of South Carolina, we have to pass a contractor's business law exam along with the National Home Inspector's exam. Pretty sure that's what you have to do there in Ohio too, correct?
Just the national, don't have to do the construction exam.
Yeah. So, that whole aspect of it. But I always tell people, like, I work for the client, like the client hired me,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean that I can, the client's like, well, I didn't like the way the windows look. That doesn't mean that I'm going to put stuff in there for a client. I tell clients all the time, like, you may think that's a defect, but in reality, that's not. Great. Somebody, wrote, I love Joni on the wall in pencil and they never got it off. Well, technically, that's just,
Yeah.
you're buying a used home. But we are that last line of defense for them to make an educated decision on the purchase of their home. I cannot emphasize that enough.
I did a re-inspection for a couple that they didn't buy the home because they didn't like the look of the windows. They were, no matter what I could tell them about the windows, that they were okay.
Yep.
They didn't like it, and there was other multiple facts, but the windows just kept coming up. I was like, wow, it was surprising to me. And then they bought a more historic home that actually had more short-term maintenance needs than what the newer home would have
Yep.
had. It did not make sense, but nor does it have to. I
No.
provided the information to them, and that's all. That's what I 100% compared about. If they or cared about, if they would have, as we weighed everything out and we were thorough with it and spent as much time as possible to go over it, um, they bought the home they wanted.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
The one question: how often do you get? Would you buy this home?
Fairly regularly. Fairly regularly.
And my general answer is I tell people, like, I can't advocate for you to buy a home, nor am I going to.
Mm-hmm.
My idea of what I would buy versus the idea of what you would buy could be polar opposite ends of the spectrum, could be absolutely on point.
Yeah.
Giving you the opinion of whether I'd buy this home or not is me kind of violating almost an ethical
Mm-hmm.
standard.
Yeah.
What I can say is the report speaks for itself. I can tell people, like, the bones are solid. It needs a little love. Or I could be
Yeah.
like, it's a little rough.
Mm-hmm.
But giving the opinion of whether to buy a home or not buy
Right.
a home is not the place of a home inspector.
Yeah.
Just as it isn't a place for a home inspector to put repair quotes. I'm a big person that doesn't believe in this.
No.
I don't think a home inspection company should put the estimate of repairs in there, because I'm not a builder.
No.
What I think it might cost and what a builder might think it's cost. I may think a builder's labor hours should be $100 an hour. The builder could be like, no, my labor hours are $250 an hour.
Yeah.
It's not my place to put that in there. I mean, I know
Yeah.
that there are inspectors out there that advocate for that, but the reality of it is the home inspector has to stay unbiased. There's, the skin in the game for us is for the homeowner.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
I totally am in the same camp with you on that, because I I still get 3 bids for everything I'm doing in my home.
Mm-hmm.
And what I estimated, and using the best resources I could for recent items, I was off a lot of money. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not saying I don't even want to be part of it. There's some of the systems that we're able to get access to provide estimates is national. Doesn't mean a rat's ass to me.
Exactly.
It could be it's a temperature scale that is telling me what something's going to be. Really, the buyer needs to figure out, with working with multiple vendors, to
Yep.
figure out what they want to spend to do it. We're calling out that it's going to be a repair. If it's a material defect, it is
Yep.
affecting the value of your home. If it's a material serious defect, it's there. If it's a low-lying maintenance issue, probably at the time we're inspecting it is not a material defect that's going to affect your cost. And you can't do that in a 4-hour window. You can't put all the systems together and provide you a cost estimate. Like most of my vendors are taking a week to get me back an accurate estimate for what they're doing. So,
well, I want to say I thank everybody for joining us. You know, we are growing, want to continue to grow. Please subscribe, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. It helps us with the page growth. Also, you know, something I'm spitballing with Brian is maybe doing some, not necessarily a live broadcast out on the field, but possibly getting some footage together to kind of walk everybody through certain things that we're seeing. Maybe do a little segment on it, make it a weekly regular on certain things that Brian sees or certain things that I see, and kind of talk about them. Defects that we're seeing, you know, pointers, things along that lines. So we look forward to everybody tuning in. And, you know, Brian, you got anything to say?
yeah, and if you're in Cincinnati and I do need to get some extra video footage and I can work some time from your home and look at some items and talk to you about it if you have some concerns, if you'll allow me to use some of the footage, I'd be happy to set up some times to do that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for joining in. I'm Yon Lucas. This is Brian Long. Home inspections matter, and I hope you guys have a great evening.
Have a good evening.